The tassel on my cap was supposed to be a symbol of my freedom, but 5 minutes before the processional, a tap on my shoulder threatened to turn it into a noose around my neck. The air inside the tunnels of the CU Boulder Stadium was thick with a specific kind of humidity, a mix of expensive perfume, nervous sweat, and the electric static of polyester gowns. I wiped my palms on my thighs for the 10th time, trying to keep my grip on the black fabric of my gown steady. Around me, the buzz was deafening. Thousands of students were adjusting their caps, checking their teeth in selfie cameras, and screaming over the noise to find their parents in the stands. I wasn't looking for anyone. There was nobody in the VIP section or the nosebleeds waiting to hear the name Riley Thompson. I was here for me. Just me. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of hairspray and floor wax. I had made it. 4 years of double shifts at Target, eating instant noodles 3 times a day, and studying until my eyes burned and my vision blurred. I had survived the microaggressions, the isolation of being one of the few black women in my major, and the crippling anxiety that I wouldn't make rent. But I was here. I was 5 minutes away from walking out onto Folsom Field and claiming the only thing that had ever truly belonged to me. Then, the tap came. It wasn't a friendly nudge from a classmate. It was firm, authoritative, and cold. I turned around to see a woman in a navy blazer standing entirely too close to me. She didn't look like a student. She looked like a problem. She wore an earpiece and held a clipboard against her chest like a shield. "Riley Thompson?" she asked. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. "Yes." I smiled, thinking maybe I'd dropped something. Maybe my honors cord had slipped. "You need to come with me," she whispered, her voice cutting through the celebratory noise like a knife. What? "The ceremony is starting in 5 minutes," I stammered, pointing toward the line of students beginning to shuffle forward. "I can't leave the line. Not after the ceremony. Not later. Now," she said, her face completely void of empathy. She stepped back, gesturing for me to step out of the procession. "Bring your things." My stomach dropped so hard I felt nauseous. The blood drained from my face, leaving my skin feeling cold and prickly. People were staring now. A few girls I had taken sociology with were whispering behind their hands, watching the scene unfold. I felt the heat rising in my neck. When someone pulls you from the graduation line moments before the music starts, you don't assume it's for a surprise party. You assume the worst. You assume you failed. You assume you've been caught. I followed her. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through wet concrete. We moved away from the light and the noise, deeper into the bowels of a stadium, past the joyful chaos and into a quiet, sterile hallway that smelled of cleaning chemicals. The silence here was oppressive. It screamed that I was in trouble. She opened a heavy metal door and ushered me into a small, windowless conference room. 2 administrators stood there, arms crossed, leaning against a cheap laminate table. They looked like executioners in business casual. One was a tall man with a receding hairline. The other was a woman who refused to make eye contact with me. "Sit down, Miss Thompson," the man said. I didn't sit. I couldn't. If I sat down, I might never get back up. "What is going on?" "My row is walking out right now. I need to be there." The man sighed, picking up a piece of paper from the table. "There's been a complaint. A credible one. Your eligibility to graduate is under review." The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic. "Under review." "What?" I choked out. "That's impossible. I have a 3.8 GPA. I paid my tuition. I cleared my library fees. I checked everything 3 times. This isn't about grades." The woman finally spoke, her voice dry. "The complaint alleges that you falsified financial aid documents. Specifically, that you misrepresented your dependency status to secure federal grants and university scholarships you were not entitled to." The room spun. For a second, I thought I was going to pass out. Falsifying documents? That was fraud. That was criminal. That wasn't just losing a degree, that was losing my future. I started, my voice shaking. "I've been independent since I was 19. I have the paperwork." "The allegation claims otherwise." The man said, his tone bored, as if he destroyed lives every Tuesday before lunch. "It claims you have been receiving covert financial support from your family while claiming estrangement. If true, that voids your financial aid package. And since your tuition was paid by that aid, it voids your enrollment. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once. Twice. I knew. In that split second, the confusion evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. I knew exactly who had done this. I pulled my phone out, ignoring the man's protest. There was a text message on the screen. Mom, this wouldn't be happening if you'd listened to us. The air left my lungs. My mother. It was always her. Growing up in Aurora, I was the difficult one because I wanted to read instead of gossip, because I wanted a career instead of a husband who would take care of me. My brother, Tyler, was the golden child. When he crashed his car, my fault for not driving him. When he dropped out of community college, my fault for not tutoring him. When I got into CU Boulder, my mother didn't celebrate. She asked why I thought I was too good for the local state school. 3 years ago, she had tried to force me to list her as a guarantor so she could claim me on her taxes, despite kicking me out of the house. I had refused. I had fought tooth and nail to be declared independent, so I could get the aid I needed to survive. I thought I had won that war. I looked up at the administrators. My mother sent that complaint, didn't she? The man blinked, surprised by my directness. We cannot disclose the source of. She's lying. I interrupted, my voice gaining strength. She's doing this to hurt me, because I cut her off. You have to let me walk. You can't take this away from me based on an email from a woman I haven't spoken to in 3 years. The dean of students is reviewing the file right now, the man said, checking his watch. He will decide if you are escorted out or if you return to the line. Until then, you wait. I stood there in my cap and gown, the cheap fabric suddenly feeling like a prison uniform. I could hear the faint sound of pomp and circumstance beginning to play in the distance. The ceremony had started, and I was in a closet with 2 strangers, while my mother, the woman who was supposed to love me, tried to burn my life to the ground from the outside. I gripped my phone tight enough to crack the screen. I had done everything right. I had worked until my fingers bled. I had starved. I had sacrificed. And yet, here I was, still fighting the ghost of the family I tried to leave behind. Have you ever had a moment where the people who were supposed to support you became the biggest obstacle to your success? We've all felt the sting of betrayal, but family betrayal cuts the deepest. It leaves a scar that nobody else can see. If you are watching this, and you have ever felt like the black sheep just for trying to better yourself, I need you to smash that like button right now. Do it for the younger version of yourself who kept fighting. Subscribe to the channel if you believe the truth always comes out in the end. And please, comment down below, what city are you watching from? Let's show the world that we are everywhere and we are survivors. The muffled brass notes of the graduation march leaked through the heavy door, mocking me. Every second that ticked by was another name called, another hand shaken, another student crossing the threshold into adulthood while I sat trapped in administrative purgatory. I stared at the text message on my phone until the pixels seemed to burn into my retinas. This wouldn't be happening if you'd listened to us. It wasn't just a text, it was a receipt of resentment. My mind flashed back 3 years to a humid afternoon in our kitchen in Aurora. I was 19, sweating over my laptop, trying to decode the labyrinth of financial aid forms. My mother had hovered over my shoulder, her breath smelling of stale coffee and judgment. Just put me down as a guarantor, Riley, she had insisted, her voice deceptively sweet. Just in case. You know how these schools are. They look for any reason to deny people like us. I can't, Mom, I had said, shielding the screen. I'm filing as independent. If I list you, they'll factor in your income, and I won't get the Pell Grant. I won't be able to afford the tuition. Oh, so you're too good for our help now? Is that it? The sweetness had vanished instantly, replaced by the sharp edge I knew too well, the same edge she used to defend my brother, Tyler, whenever he messed up. Tyler, who got a new car while I took the bus. Tyler, whose anxiety excused him from working, while my exhaustion was labeled attitude. It's not about being too good, I had argued. It's about following the rules so I can actually go to school. She had stormed out that day, screaming that I was selfish, that I was trying to make the family look poor, that I was abandoning them. Weeks later, she demanded copies of my tax forms for her records. I never sent them. I thought I had protected myself. I thought I had built a wall high enough to keep her chaos out of my life. I was wrong. She hadn't just climbed the wall. She had waited 3 years to plant a bomb at the foundation. "Miss Thompson!" The male administrator's voice snapped me back to the cold, windowless room. "Please put the phone away." I didn't move. "How long is this going to take?" "My name is in the T section. I have maybe 30 minutes before they reach me." "That depends entirely on the dean," the woman said, checking her watch with agonizing slowness. Suddenly, the heavy metal door clicked. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the small room. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. Either I was going back to the line, or I was being escorted off campus in front of everyone. The door swung open. A man walked in. He was older, wearing a charcoal suit that looked expensive, and he carried a thick manila folder that looked like it contained the nuclear codes. This was Dean Martinez. I had seen him speak at orientation freshman year. He was known for being fair but strict. He didn't look at me. He walked straight to the head of the table and slammed the folder down. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of heels announced a second arrival. My breath hitched in my throat. Walking into the room with the confidence of a woman who owned the place, wearing a dress I recognized from Easter 2 years ago, was my mother. She wasn't being escorted by security. She was wiping a tear from her eye, clutching a tissue, looking for all the world like a heartbroken parent. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fake concern, and said the one thing that froze my blood. "Oh, Riley, honey, why did you make us do this? How did she get in here?" I demanded, my voice cracking. I looked from the administrators to the security guard by the door. "This is a restricted area. She's not faculty." My mother ignored me completely. She turned her tear-streaked face toward Dean Martinez, clutching her purse with white-knuckled intensity. "I told you she'd be defensive," she said, her voice trembling with a performance worthy of an Academy Award. "She's always been difficult. We just want her to get help. We didn't want it to come to this, but fraud is serious. We couldn't let her build a life on a lie." "A lie?" I stepped forward, the rage boiling over. "The only lie here is you pretending you care. You haven't paid a cent for my education. You haven't called me on my birthday in 2 years. You're only here because you can't stand that I made it without you. See?" Mom gestured at me, looking at the dean with pleading eyes. "She's unstable. It's the pressure. She's been fabricating stories since she was a little girl. That's why we had to report the financial discrepancies. For her own good." Dean Martinez didn't speak. He didn't offer my mother a tissue, and he didn't tell me to calm down. He stood at the head of the table, his hand resting on the thick file, watching the interaction with the cold calculation of a chess player. "Mrs. Thompson," the dean said, his voice level, "you stated in your email to the registrar that you had proof Riley falsified her dependency status. You claim she was living at home during the summers and receiving cash stipends from your son, Tyler." "Tyler?" I let out a harsh, jagged laugh. "Tyler hasn't held a job longer than 3 weeks. I sent him $50 last month because he said he was out of gas." "Liar!" Mom snapped, the mask slipping for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "She's lying to cover her tracks. Please, Dean Martinez, just pull her from the ceremony. Don't let her embarrass the university. We can deal with this as a family at home." The room went silent. The faint cheering from the stadium above vibrated through the ceiling. My class was walking. They were probably at the L's or M's by now. My time was bleeding out. "I have nothing to hide," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "Check my bank accounts. Check my lease. I have receipts for every single dollar I've spent for 4 years." Dean Martinez finally moved. He pulled a chair out and sat down, opening the folder. He didn't look at the papers. He looked at my mother. "We did check Riley," he said. "We checked everything. When an accusation of this magnitude comes in minutes before commencement, we don't take it lightly. We dug deep." My mother nodded vigorously. "Exactly. Thank you for taking it seriously." "Oh, we took it very seriously," Martinez said. He pulled out a stack of papers clipped together. Emails, but they looked different. They had lines of code running across the headers. He looked at my mother, his expression shifting from neutral to something dangerous. "Mrs. Thompson, you seem to be under the impression that I am currently reviewing Riley's eligibility to graduate." He slid the folder across the table, not toward me, but toward her. "I'm not," he said darkly. Because this file doesn't raise concerns about Riley. It raises serious, potential criminal concerns about you. The silence that followed Dean Martinez's declaration was heavy enough to crush bone. My mother's face, previously a mask of tragic concern, went slack. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock, struggling to find oxygen in an environment that had suddenly turned hostile. I don't understand, she stammered, her gaze darting to the security guard, then back to the folder. I came here to help. I came here to save the university from a scandal. No, Mrs. Thompson, Dean Martinez said, flipping a page in the file with deliberate precision. You came here to sabotage your daughter. But you were sloppy. He spun the papers around so we could both see them. They were printouts of the evidence attached to the complaint email. Bank statements, tax returns, documents I recognized but that looked wrong. The complaint was sent from a Gmail account registered to you, Martinez continued, pointing a finger at the header. And these attachments, they weren't just scanned. They were altered. Badly. He tapped a specific line on a bank statement. The font here is Arial. The rest of the document is in Times New Roman. The dates on this transaction don't match the fiscal year. And the metadata, it shows these files were modified in Photoshop yesterday afternoon at 4 p.m. I stared at the paper. It was a screenshot of my savings account, but the balance had been inflated by 3 zeros to make it look like I was hoarding hidden cash. I looked at my mother. She wasn't looking at the evidence. She was looking at me with pure venom. I was hacked, she blurted out, her voice rising an octave. Someone hacked my email. Riley probably did it. She's good with computers. She's setting me up. We considered that, Martinez said, his tone icy. Which is why we looked into the history of Riley's file. And that is where things get interesting. He turned another page. This one had a red stamp on it. Verified independent, 2022. Riley was declared financially independent by this university 2 years ago due to documented estrangement, the dean said. The status is locked. It cannot be overturned by a last-minute email. I frowned, confusion warring with relief. Wait. I applied for independence, but I thought it was just approved because of my letters. I didn't know there was a special verification. Martinez looked at me, his expression softening for the first time. It wasn't just your letters, Riley. The status was granted after an internal investigation was triggered by suspicious activity on your student account. Suspicious activity? I asked. I never had suspicious activity. You didn't, Martinez said. He looked back at my mother, whose face had gone from red to a sickly shade of pale gray. But someone else did. The dean leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that echoed louder than a scream. 3 years ago, your scholarship disbursement was delayed. You thought it was a system error. It wasn't. The system flagged it because someone logged into the student portal using your social security number and attempted to change the direct deposit routing information. My blood ran cold. The IP address for that login attempt, Martinez said, locking eyes with my mother, matches the IP address of the device that sent the fraudulent complaint email this morning. That's impossible, my mother whispered, clutching her purse to her chest as if it contained a weapon. Is it? Martinez asked. He pulled one final, terrifying piece of paper from the bottom of the stack. Because according to the bank details entered during that attempt, the account the money was supposed to go to doesn't belong to a stranger. Riley, do you recognize this account number? I looked at the number. I didn't just recognize it. It was the account I used to deposit my babysitting money into when I was 16, a joint account. Joint with her. The account, Martinez said, is in the name of Tyler Thompson. Tyler! The name felt like a shard of glass in my throat. You tried to steal my tuition money for Tyler? My mother didn't shrink away. She didn't apologize. Instead, she stood up straighter, her face twisting into a scowl of self-righteous indignation. He was in debt, Riley, she snapped, throwing her hands up as if the answer were obvious. He had credit card bills. He was stressed. He couldn't work with his anxiety. You know that. You were sitting on thousands of dollars of refund checks while your brother was drowning. We're a family. We share resources. I wasn't sitting on cash. I shouted, the tears finally spilling over, not from sadness, but from pure, unadulterated fury. That was for books. For rent. So I didn't have to sleep in my car. He tried to make me homeless so Tyler could pay off what? A gambling debt. A new gaming PC. You selfish little, she started, lunging forward. Enough! Dean Martinez's voice boomed, stopping her in her tracks. He stood up, towering over the table. Mrs. Thompson, let me be crystal clear. Attempting to redirect federal student aid funds is wire fraud. It is a federal crime. The university chose not to press charges 3 years ago because we blocked the transaction in time and wanted to spare Riley the trauma. But today you walked into my office with falsified documents and attempted to blackmail a student. He closed the folder with a finality that echoed in the room. I am banning you from this campus, effective immediately. If you set foot on university property again, you will be arrested for trespassing and harassment. He nodded to the security guard. Escort her out. Now. You can't do this, my mother shrieked as the guard grabbed her elbow. She thrashed, her mask of civility completely gone. I'm her mother. I have rights. Riley, tell them. Tell them you owe us. I don't owe you a damn thing, I said, my voice shaking but loud. I never did. As the guard dragged her toward the door, she turned back, her eyes wild. You think you're so special? You've ruined this family. You're dead to us, do you hear me? Dead. The door slammed shut, cutting off her voice. The silence that rushed back into the room was ringing in my ears. I leaned against the table, trembling. Dean Martinez sighed, his shoulders dropping. He looked tired. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Riley. Am I still graduating? I asked, wiping my face with the back of my hand. Riley, he said, a small smile touching his lips. He opened the file one last time. Not only are you cleared, but there was one more document in here your mother didn't know about. The sociology department voted last week. You're receiving the departmental distinction for excellence. We were going to announce it when you walked. I stared at him. Distinction. After everything. Now, he checked his watch. You have exactly 3 minutes to get back to the tunnel before your name is called. Run. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my cap, thanked him breathlessly, and sprinted out of the office. I ran through the concrete hallways, my gown billowing behind me like a superhero cape. I could hear the announcer's voice booming over the speakers. They were on the S names. I skidded to a halt at the back of the line just as the coordinator signaled the T group to move. I was panting, sweating and shaking, but I was there. I reached into my pocket to turn my phone off before walking onto the field. But as the screen lit up, I froze. I had a new notification. Voicemail, unknown number. Duration, 042. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the play button. Who would be calling me from an unknown number right now? I hit play, holding the phone to my ear as the line started to move. A voice crackled through the speaker. It was male, deep, and sounded official. Miss Thompson, my name is Arthur Vance. I'm a forensic accountant based in Denver. I was just forwarded a file regarding a trust in your name that was liquidated 3 days ago. We need to speak before you cash any checks from your family. Do not, I repeat, do not sign anything. Thompson Riley. The name boomed over the loudspeakers, distorted by the echo of a stadium, but to me, it sounded like a choir of angels. I shoved the phone deep into the pocket of my gown, the voicemail from Arthur Vance burning against my hip like a hot coal. Trust. Liquidated. The words swirled in my head, fighting for space against the adrenaline. But I couldn't process them now. I had 10 seconds to walk across a stage that my family had tried to bar me from. I stepped into the light. The sun over Folsom Field was blinding, gleaming off the thousands of golden buffalo statues on the diplomas stacked on the table. As I walked toward the center, I saw Dean Martinez standing there. He wasn't just handing out folders, he was shaking hands. When I reached him, he paused. He didn't just hand me my diploma. He leaned in, his voice audible only to me over the roar of the crowd. You earned this, Riley. Every single inch of it. Then, he turned to the microphone again. Departmental distinction in sociology. The crowd erupted. Somewhere in the sea of black caps and gowns, my friends, Jasmine, Chloe, and Ben were screaming my name. I didn't look for my mother in the stands. I knew she wasn't there. For the first time in my life, her absence didn't feel like a hole, it felt like space. Space for me to breathe. Space for me to exist without apologizing. I accepted the diploma, the leather smooth under my fingers, and walked off the other side of the stage. A camera flashed, capturing the moment, me, smiling, triumphant, free. But the moment the camera lowered, the reality of the voicemail came rushing back. I navigated through the hugs and the high fives, forcing a smile plastered on my face. Congrats, Riley. We did it. Drinks at the Walrus tonight. I nodded, laughed, and promised to meet them later. I needed a quiet corner. I found a spot near the concession stands, shielded by a concrete pillar. My hands were shaking as I pulled my phone back out. I dialed the unknown number. It rang once. Twice. Arthur Vance, a gruff voice answered. This is Riley Thompson, I said, pressing the phone tight to my ear to block out the graduation band playing in the distance. I just got your voicemail. I don't have a trust. I don't have any money. I think you have the wrong person. I don't make mistakes like that, Miss Thompson, Vance replied instantly. The sound of typing clicked in the background. And you don't have money now. That's the problem. But until 3 days ago, you were the sole beneficiary of a custodial trust fund established in 2008. 2008. I frowned. I was 6 years old. We were on food stamps in 2008. You were, Vance said, his voice dropping. But your father wasn't. I froze. My father left before I was born. My mom said he was a deadbeat who died in a bar fight in Texas. Miss Thompson, Vance said, and the tone of his voice made the hair on my arm stand up. Your father was an actuary for a major insurance firm. He didn't die in a bar fight. He died in a car accident in Denver. And the settlement from that accident, the settlement your mother told the court was put into a protected account for your education, was never touched. Until this week. I leaned against the concrete wall, the world tilting on its axis. How much? I whispered. The principal was $200,000, Vance said. With interest over 16 years? You're looking at nearly $500,000. $500,000. I had scrubbed toilets at Target to pay for textbooks. I had eaten peanut butter for dinner for months. I had begged for independence overrides. And all that time, you said it was liquidated, I said, my voice hardening. Who took it? The withdrawal request came from a Riley Thompson, Vance said. But the signature is wrong. The notary stamp, however, is real. I tracked the wire transfer. It didn't go to your mother's account. Then where is it? It was wired to an offshore holding company, Vance said. But here is the kicker, Riley. The holding company isn't new. It's been receiving small, steady payments from your mother's personal account for years. She hasn't just been stealing your past. She's been paying someone off. Paying who? I don't know yet, Vance said. But I found a name associated with the LLC's registration documents. It's a name I think you might know. Does Elias Thorne mean anything to you? I stopped breathing. Elias Thorne wasn't a family friend. He wasn't a relative. Elias Thorne was the name of the judge who had granted my mother full custody of us 16 years ago and denied my father visitation rights. Judge Thorne. I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. The name sounded like a gavel strike. Why would my mother be paying a family court judge? That's what I intend to find out, Vance replied. I'm sitting at the Starbucks on Broadway in Pleasant. Can you get here? You need to see the documents. I didn't go back to the ceremony. I didn't say goodbye to my friends. I didn't return the rented gown. I walked straight out of the stadium, still wearing the black robe, clutching my diploma tube like a baton. I walked until my feet blistered in my heels, the adrenaline masking the pain. When I arrived, Arthur Vance was easy to spot. He was a compact man with wire-rimmed glasses and a laptop covered in security stickers. He didn't look like a lawyer. He looked like a hacker who had gone corporate. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He spun the laptop around. This is the trust deed, he said, pointing to a scanned PDF. Established by your father, Robert Thompson, in 2008. It was an irrevocable trust, meaning your mother couldn't touch the principal. It was set to dissolve and transfer to you upon your college graduation. So she panicked, I realized. She knew the bank would contact me today or tomorrow. Exactly. So she forged a withdrawal request 3 days ago. She likely used a fake ID with your name on it, something she probably made years ago. Vance clicked to the next tab. But here is the wire transfer history. The money didn't go to her. It went to Thorne Consulting Group, LLC in the Caymans. You said she's been paying him for years, I said, staring at the numbers. Why? I ran a background check on Judge Elias Thorne, Vance said, leaning in. He presided over 300 custody cases in Arapahoe County between 2005 and 2015. He was known for favoring mothers. But he retired abruptly in 2016 after an internal ethics inquiry that was sealed. My mom got full custody, I murmured. My dad was banned from seeing us. She told me he was dangerous. Your father had no criminal record, Riley. He was a boring math geek. There was no reason for him to lose visitation, unless the judge was incentivized. So she bribed him? I asked. To keep my dad away. Why? That's the million-dollar question. Or in this case, the $500,000 question. Vance closed the laptop. But there's an immediate problem. The liquidation of the trust wasn't the only activity on your Social Security number this week. My stomach tightened. What else did she do? It wasn't her, Vance said grimly. While I was tracking the wire transfer, I got a ping on a credit inquiry. Someone just tried to lease a luxury apartment in downtown Denver using your credit profile. The application was flagged because of the fraud alert I put on your file an hour ago. Who applied? Vance slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of a rental application. The name on the applicant line was Riley Thompson, but the copy of the driver's license attached to the application wasn't me. It was a man with a familiar, smug smirk. Tyler, I spat. He's using my identity to get an apartment. He's using your identity to disappear, Vance corrected. But look at the co-signer listed on the application. I looked at the bottom of the page. The co-signer wasn't my mother. It was a signature I had never seen before, written in sharp, jagged black ink. Elias Thorne. The judge, I breathed. Why would a retired judge co-sign an apartment for my deadbeat brother using my stolen identity? Vance took his glasses off and looked me dead in the eye. Because I found a sealed paternity test in the metadata of the hacked emails, Riley. Robert Thompson was your father. But he wasn't Tyler's. The world didn't just tilt, it shattered. I stared at the signature of Elias Thorne, the man who had legally erased my father from my life, sitting right next to my brother's name. Tyler is Thorne's son, I asked, the pieces of my childhood slamming into place like a violent puzzle. It explains everything, Vance said, typing furiously on his laptop as he closed the lid and stood up. The custody ruling. The fact that your mother, a waitress with no legal counsel, defeated a corporate actuary in court. Thorne wasn't just a biased judge. He was protecting his own interests. He ruled against your father to keep him away from Tyler. To keep the secret. I felt a wave of nausea, followed immediately by a cold, sharp clarity. My mother hadn't just preferred Tyler because he was a boy, or because he was needy. She preferred him because he was her leverage. She had been blackmailing a judge for 2 decades, and when that wasn't enough, she stole my father's legacy, my survival money, to fund her golden child's lifestyle. They're at the leasing office now, Vance said, checking his phone. The credit alert gave me the location. The generic leasing office label on the inquiry just updated to a specific merchant ID. The Glass House Apartments on 17th Street. That's 10 minutes away, I said, grabbing my diploma. Let's go. Vance drove his nondescript sedan like a getaway driver. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the city blur by. I wasn't the scared student anymore. I wasn't the girl begging for financial aid overrides. I was the daughter of Robert Thompson, and I was done paying for sins I didn't commit. We screeched into the parking lot of the luxury high-rise. It was the kind of place with valet parking and a doorman, places I had only ever seen from the sidewalk. There, I pointed. My mother's rusted Toyota Camry was parked haphazardly next to a sleek, black Mercedes S-Class. The contrast was almost comical. That Mercedes is registered to Thorne Consulting, Vance confirmed. They're all here. We bypassed the front desk. Vance flashed a badge that I didn't get a good look at. It might have been real, or it might have been a very good prop, and the concierge pointed us toward the private conference rooms in the back. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I kicked the door open. The room was all glass and chrome. Seated around a long table were 3 people, My mother, looking pale and jittery, sat on the left. Tyler, looking bored and scrolling on his phone, sat on the right. And at the head of the table sat a man with silver hair and a suit that cost more than my entire college education. Judge Elias Thorne. The room went deadly silent. My mother gasped, dropping her purse. Tyler looked up, his eyes widening as he saw Vance behind me. "Riley!" Mom squeaked. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for my money," I said, my voice steady. "And I'm here to tell Tyler who his daddy really is." Tyler frowned, looking from me to the old man. "What is she talking about?" Judge Thorne didn't flinch. He didn't look scared. He didn't look guilty. He slowly uncapped a fountain pen and placed it on the document in front of him. He looked at me with an expression that was terrifyingly calm. "I was wondering when you'd put it together, Riley," Thorne said, his voice smooth as velvet. "You always were the smart one, much sharper than your mother." "You're going to jail," I said, stepping forward. "Fraud, embezzlement, bribery." Thorne chuckled. It was a dry, dusty sound. He reached into his jacket pocket. Vance tensed beside me, ready to lunge. But Thorne didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a single, thick envelope and slid it across the glass table toward me. "I expected you to come," Thorne said, "which is why I prepared this. Before you start throwing around accusations of theft, you might want to look at what your father, your real father, actually left you. Because the trust fund wasn't the only secret Robert Thompson had." My fingers trembled as I reached for the envelope. The paper was heavy, cream-colored, and sealed with a wax stamp that looked like it belonged in the 19th century. "Don't touch it, Riley." Mom lunged across the table, knocking over a carafe of water. "He's lying. He's trying to confuse you." "Sit down, Karen," Judge Thorne said, his voice cracking like a whip. He didn't raise his voice, but the authority in it froze her instantly. She sank back into her chair, sobbing into her hands. Tyler just sat there, phone in hand, looking like a deer in headlights, realizing his entire existence was a bargaining chip. I ripped the envelope open. Inside wasn't a check. It wasn't a deed. It was a photocopy of a police report from 16 years ago. The accident report for Robert Thompson. I scanned the document. Vehicle, 2005 Ford Taurus. Cause of accident, brake failure. Driver status, deceased. "I've seen this," I said, looking up at Thorne with confusion. "I have a copy of this in my own files." "Look at the signature at the bottom," Thorne said, leaning back in his leather chair, crossing his hands over his stomach. "The coroner." I looked. The signature was messy, barely legible. "Dr. A. Vance." I froze. I turned slowly to look at Arthur Vance standing beside me. Vance wasn't looking at the paper. He was looking at Thorne with a hatred so pure it was palpable. "You recognized him, didn't you, Elias?" Vance said, his voice low and dangerous. "You knew exactly who I was when I walked in the door." "Arthur Vance," Thorne mused. "The disgraced medical examiner who lost his license for falsifying death certificates. I thought you were in prison." "I got out," Vance said, his fists clenching. "And I became a forensic accountant to hunt down the people who paid me to lie." My head was spinning. I stepped away from Vance. You signed my father's death certificate? But you're helping me." "I'm helping you because I owe you," Vance said, not taking his eyes off the judge. "Riley, 16 years ago, this man and your mother came to me. They offered me $50,000 to sign off on a body that was burned beyond recognition. They told me it was Robert Thompson." "It was—" Mom screamed. "It was him." "No, it wasn't," Thorne interrupted, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "It was a drifter we pulled from the morgue. A John Doe." The room seemed to tilt. The air was sucked out of the glass-walled conference room. "What are you saying?" I whispered. "I'm saying," Thorne said, standing up and buttoning his jacket, "that I didn't steal your trust fund, Riley. I didn't need to. That money was never for your education. It was a payoff. A monthly installment I sent to an offshore account to keep a very specific person from coming back to Denver and ruining my career." "Who?" Tyler asked, his voice trembling. Thorne looked at me, his eyes gleaming with malicious delight. "Your father, Riley. Robert Thompson isn't dead. He took the hush money, faked his death with your mother's help, and abandoned you to start a new life in the Cayman Islands. Your mother isn't the only villain here. Your hero father sold you for a beach house. Liar! I screamed. He wouldn't. Wouldn't he? Thorne challenged. Then explain why the wire transfer your mother attempted 3 days ago, the one Vance tracked? It wasn't blocked. It went through. Vance scrambled to his laptop, typing furiously. His face went pale. He's right, Vance whispered. The transfer cleared. The money is gone. But... Vance paused, staring at the screen, his brow furrowing in confusion. But what? I demanded. The IP address that accepted the transfer, Vance said, looking up at me, his eyes wide with terror. It's not in the Cayman Islands. He turned the laptop screen toward me. A blinking red dot pulsed on a map. The device that accepted the money, Vance said, his voice barely audible. It's active right now, and the GPS signal is coming from inside this room. At that exact moment, a cell phone began to ring. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Mom's. It wasn't Tyler's. And it wasn't the judge's. The ringing was coming from the briefcase Arthur Vance had set down on the floor. Vance clicked the latch on the briefcase. The ringing stopped. He didn't pull out a phone. He pulled out a recording device with a blinking green light. I didn't steal the money, Riley, Vance said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. I secured it. Your father died 2 weeks ago in Georgetown. He didn't abandon you for a beach house, Elias. He went into hiding because you threatened to kill his daughter if he didn't disappear. Judge Thorne's face drained of color. You have no proof. I do now, Vance said, tapping the device. And so does the FBI field office in Denver. They've been listening for the last 20 minutes. Thorne lunged for the briefcase, but the glass doors of the conference room shattered inward as a SWAT team swarmed the room. Federal agents. Nobody moved. The next few minutes were a blur of shouting, handcuffs, and the satisfying sound of justice snapping shut. I watched as they zip-tied Judge Thorne's hands behind his back. The man who had played God with my life was reduced to a sputtering, terrified old man. Then they turned to my mother. Riley, she screamed as an officer pulled her arms back. Riley, tell them. I'm your mother. I did it for the family. I did it for Tyler. I looked at Tyler. He was sitting in the corner, not arrested, but sobbing into his hands, looking like a child whose toys had been taken away. He was innocent of the crime, perhaps, but guilty of the entitlement that had fueled it. I walked over to my mother. She stopped struggling, hope flaring in her eyes. Riley, please, she whispered. I'm sorry. We can fix this. We can start over. I leaned in close, so only she could hear me. You didn't do it for the family, Mom. You did it because you were afraid of being ordinary. You destroyed Dad, you crippled Tyler, and you tried to erase me. I stood up, smoothing the wrinkles in my graduation gown. I'm not erasing you. I'm just leaving you behind. I turned my back on her. As the officers let her out, her wails faded into the background noise of the lobby. Outside, the air was crisp and cool. The sun had set, and the city lights were flickering on. Arthur Vance stood by his car, holding a thin envelope. Your father wanted to come back, Vance said softly. He spent 16 years building that account back up, waiting for the day Thorne lost his grip. He hired me a month ago to ensure you got it. He was proud of you, Riley. He watched every achievement from afar. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a bank access key and a letter in handwriting I barely remembered. The money is yours, Vance said. Legally. Fully. It's enough to pay for law school, or a house, or a trip to the moon. Law school, I said without hesitation. I looked back at the glass tower where my past was being hauled away in squad cars. I think I have a knack for uncovering the truth. Vance smiled, a genuine, warm expression. I think you do. I walked away from the luxury apartment complex, clutching the letter from a father who loved me and the future I had fought for. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my friends. Where are you? The party is starting. I looked at the message, then at the stars above Denver. I wasn't just Riley Thompson, the girl they tried to remove from graduation. I was Riley Thompson, the girl who took down a judge, outsmarted her tormentors, and reclaimed her life. I typed back, I'm on my way, and drinks are on me. I hailed a cab, slid into the back seat, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. I just looked forward,